Right, well, here we are. So, I have no idea whether this stream is working, due to the fact that I haven't been able to actually see what's going on. The live streaming dashboard is not working. So, with that said, I have absolutely no clue. So I'm going to continue to go until such a time as I can see the live streaming dashboard, and I'll hope that whatever it is up. I've been working for the past 15 minutes or so trying to get it to show up. It hasn't worked. There's YouTube's joke page, the internal server problem thing, so I'm certainly hoping that their servers are still taking the uploaded footage. Now, with that said, I completely forgot the title that I'm supposed to use for the SlideShare, the SlideShare thing. So I got myself a little bit flustered, so I'm gonna have to just get myself all like level-headed again, and hopefully get you all the things that you need. Alright. And hopefully get you all the things that you need. The Iliad? Book 1. Okay, so I'll just make the file. We're going over Book 1, lines 383 through 554. We have an educational video. And I can go and put this piece up here on SlideShare for you guys. I think. Good. Oops. $383 through 554. Great. Put this one up for you. I can't put that in the description. This is, well, if you look at the previous video, there's going to be a SlideShare. Well, I'll try again. I'll try to get to the, I'll try to look at my YouTube dashboard again. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But we'll still go. Ah! Okay, apparently I have been live for 3 minutes and 50 seconds, so you've gotten a chance to see me mess around and have no clue what I'm doing. Excellent. Well, there we go. Alright. The title should be there. The SlideShare link should be there. And we're only about 5 minutes into the stream, so we should be about ready to go. Alright. So our previous piece ended with Achilles threatening Agamemnon, but not killing him. So our context is the book opening with an account of a pestilence that prevailed in the Grecian camp, and the cause of it is assigned. A council is called in which fierce altercation takes place between Agamemnon and Achilles. The latter solemnly renounces the field. Agamemnon, by his heralds, demands Briseis, and Achilles resigns her. He makes his complaint to Thetis, that's his mom, who undertakes to plead his cause with Jupiter. She pleads it and prevails. The book concludes with an account of what passed in heaven on that occasion. So Agamemnon says to Nestor, "You've spoken well, old chief, and wisely. But Achilles, nothing will suffice him but the highest place. He must control us all, reign over all, and so on. If the eternal gods have made him brave, derives he thence a privilege to rail?" And then Achilles just goes and basically says, "Okay, you're not. I'm hating this idea that you're taking my prize. I'm hating this idea that you're taking my girl." Ah! Which leads into what it is we are doing now, which is, "Thus they, long time in opposition fierce, maintained the war of words, and now at length the grand consult dissolved, Achilles walked, Patroclus and the Myrmidon his steps, attending to his camp and to his fleet. But Agamemnon ordered forth a bark, a swift one manned with twice 10 lusty rowers. He sent on board the hecatomb, he placed Chryseis with the blooming cheeks himself, and to Ulysses, Odysseus, gave the freight in charge. So all embarked and ploughed their watery way. Atrides next bade purify the host. The host was purified as he enjoined, and the ablution cast into the sea. Then to Apollo on the shore they slew, of the untillable and barren deep, whole hecatombs of bulls and goats whose steam slowly in smoky volumes climbed the skies. So basically they washed the offering, killed the offering, and dedicated it to Apollo. And thus was the camp employed, nor cease the while. The son of Atreus from his threats denounced, at first against Achilles, but command gave to Talthybius and Eurybates, his heralds, ever faithful to his will. Haste, seek ye both the tent of Peleus' son. Achilles thence led hither by the hand, blooming Briseis, whom if he withhold not her alone, but other spoil, myself will take in person, he shall rue the hour. So they gave the offering and went after Achilles. Hello, now if I recall correctly, you were Jack? I'm sorry, I didn't really sleep well last night either, so I'm not entirely certain who's here. I'm not entirely certain what I'm doing, but I'm proceeding forward anyway. If I got your name wrong already in advance, I'm very sorry. If I got your name right, I'm very surprised. Ha! Yay! I didn't completely screw up everything. After we're done with this poem, or after we're done with this little piece of the Iliad, there's another smaller poem I'd like to share with you and a little bit of history behind it. Unfortunately, this is just one of those things that proves what a dirty mind I have, so take that for whatever it's worth. With such harsh message charged he them dismissed, They sat in slow beside the barren waste of ocean to the galleys and the tents. Moved of the Myrmidons, him there they found, beneath the shadow of his bark reclined, nor glad at their approach, trembling they stood, in presence of the royal chief, awe-struck, nor questioned him or spake, he not the less knew well their embassy, and thus began. Ye heralds, messengers of gods and men, hail and draw near, I bid you welcome both. I blame not you, the fault is his alone, who sends you to conduct the damsel hence. Perseus, go, Patroclus' generous friend, lead forth and to their guidance give the maid. But be themselves my witnesses before the blessed gods, before mankind before. The ruthless king should want of me be felt, to save the host from havoc, oh his thoughts are madness all, intelligence or skill, forecast or retrospect how best the camp may be secured from inroad, none hath he. So now basically we're getting a chance to see the events that we kind of knew were coming, getting played out. And every little point is being drawn out. And it's interesting because in my normal way of thinking, in my normal way of functioning, I don't like drawing these things out. I like just going and getting the bullet point list. I like, okay, I like getting first. Okay, what happened? Achilles has Briseis. Agamemnon has Chryseis. Chryseis' dad comes, demands a ransom. Apollo's on his side. You know, I prefer to just go through the thing this way. But it's interesting because you get to see a bit more into the character of the people. And it's implicit. You can see the character of Achilles is one that he's not going to go, and even though he's completely full of wrath, even though he's completely angry at things, he's not going to go and blow up at the wrong person. He's not going to go and like, people would be pensive in approaching him. People would be scared in approaching him. People didn't want to go and do what they set out to do because, well, they were kind of afraid of him. He, after all, was a mighty warrior, but he still conducted himself honorably in the exchange in accordance with what he knew needed to be done. Now, whether he was right in that assessment or not is another thing, but it was what he was doing, what was expected of him, or what would be understood to be correct, given their current understanding. Given their understanding of gods and of men and of all these different things and the role of religion in society. So he pulled off his role as graciously as possible. And he has his buddy Patroclus. He's like, okay, would you please take care of this? Go, Patroclus' generous friend, lead forth and to their guidance give the maid. And so Patroclus is there through it all, being a faithful friend and companion to Achilles. And that's something quite special that you wind up seeing throughout this book until Patroclus dies. That he is there, and he's actually mentioned from time to time. He's actually he's not just the invisible sidekick. People understood how important it was that Achilles had a friend. People understood how important it was for the protagonist to have a support group. And it's interesting because Achilles wasn't even afraid to go and ultimately, bare his soul before his mother and say, okay, here's how things are going for me. Achilles wasn't afraid to, have friends around. Achilles wasn't afraid to have all of these elements that we don't necessarily associate with the strong, independent protagonist. So take that for what it's worth. If you are the protagonist of your own story, it might behoove you to have good relationships with family and friends. And if you can't have good relationships with family and friends, at least try to find people that you can trust and surround yourselves with them. Like, there are these basic ideas, these basic truths that kind of get hidden in the pages of poetry. And who knows, maybe after each week I can go and put a list of things that I've learned. And as I guarantee you, the next time I wind up going through this, I'm going to wind up deriving different stuff from it. Before I continue, we've finished line 432. I'm going to come and take a look at the chat, see if anybody has said anything. Alright, no one said anything yet. So lines 433 through 439. He ended, nor Patroclus disobeyed, but leading beautiful Briseis forth, into their guidance gave her, loth she went, from whom she loved, and looking oft behind, then wept Achilles, and apart from all, with eyes directed to the gloomy deep, and arms outstretched his mother suppliant sought. So the thought is that somehow Achilles is so much associated with war that he was viewing her more as a prize as opposed to a companion, as to a wife, or as to someone that actually mattered to him. But apparently she really did matter to him. And that also teaches us a lesson. If we are devoted to one thing, or we are strongly known for one thing, whatever that may be, the other aspects of our life, at least in the eyes of a bystander, and even in the eyes of a scholar that might have studied us, right, could be somehow distorted. People go and they see someone very strong in one way and then assume that this person doesn't have a complex and multifaceted life. Oh, he must be, thinking only about war if you're talking about Achilles, or someone must be only thinking about business if he's involved in business, or someone must only be thinking about his art or craft if he's involved in a particular art or craft. And though such obsession can occur, it is by no means all there is. We all are, in our own way, complex. Some of us are more complex than others, but there are all sorts of intricacies, there are all sorts of nuances, there are all sorts of elements of our lives that people can get wrong. And it's interesting because I'm saying this by mere conjecture, but I'm going to go and take issue with many people that have gone and said, well, Achilles was just this one-dimensional loser dude without much character. When I was studying this stuff in an undergraduate course at university. This is one of the last courses I took because I had taken all my chemistry and biology stuff beforehand. But when I was studying this as an undergraduate, my professor basically wanted to make 2 points here. his first point was that Achilles wasn't all he was cracked up to be. And the second point he wanted to make, he wanted us to all believe that Achilles and Patroclus were gay. So, and it's interesting because neither of these points are substantiated. Certainly, you can go and cherry pick evidence for any of them. But this guy himself was a very brazen, anti-straight homosexual dude. I mean, he wasn't. He wasn't as bad as some, and he certainly, it was before a light was shined upon the state of things in universities and so on. You know, trying to push a particular narrative. And well, I never quite understood his purpose, because whatever book we wound up reading in his course, and whatever thing we ever wound up talking about, he would always, well, being in a Catholic university, he'd always, of course, first take the most non-Catholic tack, and always tout as good things that Catholics would call wrong. But he had tenure, so he was able to do whatever he wanted. And probably nobody cared anyway. And now I know I'm going to get a whole bunch of haters and people saying that I'm against homosexuality. Well, I you know, as a Christian, I don't believe that it's condoned by the Bible or condoned by God or something, but I'm not going to go and just set myself against people. That's not what I'm doing either, but I'm just saying that going and rewriting and re-understanding things and putting new spins on old things just to have them conform to your own prejudices could be dangerous. And who knows, maybe I'm putting spins on this to have it conform to my prejudices. You know, I was just under the impression that the ancients had different ideas of love. You know, that there would be storge, that there would be philios, that there would be eros, and there would be agape. So agape is like unconditional love. And then philios would be like, you know, the city of Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. So I would say that Achilles and Patroclus had that. I mean, I've had that with a few people, and it's very rare to find, you know, a friend that is closer than a brother, as the proverb goes. There is a friend who is closer than a brother. Very, very rare to find that kind of a person. And I think that there are many ways of relating to people, and you don't wind up needing to hypersexualize those that are not sexualized. But due to the nature of modern life, I mean, you're either not involved with somebody or you're banging him. Perhaps that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but I think you get my point. So I think that we can go and take what's going on here as an example of healthy philios. Then, of course, storge is love of parents and children, and eros is love between lovers, from which comes the word erotic. So anyhow, you have some agape and eros that Achilles is dealing with right here, loving Briseis, and then you wind up having his friend who's there for him. So you have Philios, and he's going to go see his mom. So you're dealing with storge. This is a multifaceted, complex situation that he finds himself in, and ultimately, I'd say, all things considered, he's quite well adjusted. He says, "Since mother, though ordained so soon to die, I am thy son, I might with cause expect some honor at the Thunderer's hands, but none. To me he shows whom Agamemnon, chief of the Achaeans, hath himself disgraced, seizing by violence my just reward." So prayed he weeping, whom his mother heard, within the gulfs of ocean where she sat, beside her ancient sire from the grey flood. Ascending sudden like a mist she came, sat down before him, stroked his face, and said, "Why weeps my son, and what is thy distress? Hide not a sorrow that I wish to share." To whom Achilles, sighing deep, replied. Right. And you have, what, here? 57 lines, or 56 lines after this. So I can go and say, here we have lines 453 to 509. This is what happens when somebody is angry. You can have the kinds of people that will just say one little thing and then be done. Or you can have the situation where you're with someone that you trust and you just bear everything. Well, apparently Achilles trusted his mom, and it was enough for him to be able to go on and on about this. "Why tell thee woes to thee already known? At Thebes, Iltion city, we arrived. Smoke sacked it and brought all the spoil away. Just distribution made among the Greeks. The son of Atreus for his lot received. Blooming Chryseis her, Apollo's priest. Old Chryses followed to Achaea's camp, that he might loose his daughter." So it's interesting. He's like, well, why tell thee woes to thee already known? Okay, Mom, you already know this. But I'm going to tell you anyway because I got to get this off my chest. Ransom rich, he brought, and in his hands the hallowed wreath, and golden scepter of the archer god, Apollo bore to the whole Grecian host, but chiefly to the foremost in command. He sued the sons of Atreus, then the rest. All recommended reverence of the seer, and prompt acceptance of his costly gifts. But Agamemnon might not so be pleased, who gave him rude dismission he in wrath, returning prayed whose prayer Apollo heard, for much he loved him a pestiferous shaft. He instant shot into the Grecian host, and heaped the people died, the arrows swept. The whole camp of Greece till at the last, a seer by Phoebus taught explained the cause. Okay, so Apollo's shaft hitting the Grecian host. Apollo, as we may have discussed a couple times ago, I can't remember if I said this before, he was often known as the god of the mouse god, or the god of pestilence. And when he would fire his arrows, pestilence would come. So there was a pestilence upon the camp of the Greeks, and it was attributed to Apollo. I first advised propitiation, rage, fired Agamemnon, rising he denounced vengeance, and hath fulfilled it, she in truth is gone to Chrysa, and with her we send propitiation, and also to the king. Shaft armed Apollo, but my beauteous prize, Briseis mine by the award of all, his heralds at this moment led away. But thou, wherein thou canst aid thine own son, haste hence to heaven, and if thy word or deed hath ever gratified the heart of Jove, with earnest suit press him on my behalf. For I, not seldom in my father's hall, have heard thee boasting how, when once the gods with Juno, Neptune, Pallas at their head, conspired to bind the Thunderer thou didst lose. His bands, loose his bands, O goddess, calling to his aid. The 100-handed warrior by the gods, Briareus but by men, Aegean named, for he in prowess and in might surpassed his father Neptune, who enthroned sublime sits second only to Saturnian Jove. Elate with glory and joy him all the gods, fearing from that bold enterprise, abstained. Now therefore, of these things reminding Jove, embrace his knees, entreat him that he give the host of Troy his succor, and shut fast the routed Grecians prisoners in the fleet, that all may find much solace in their king, and that the mighty sovereign o'er them all, their Agamemnon, may himself be taught his rashness, who hath thus dishonored foul the life itself and bulwark of his cause. So he entreats to his mom that she would entreat to Zeus that Agamemnon would get what's coming to him. That Agamemnon would ultimately lose. I mean, he was there at Agamemnon's side fighting against the Trojans, and now he is praying that the Trojans would win, that the people would draw nearer to Agamemnon, that people would recognize him as their sovereign leader, and that they would lose, and that Agamemnon would thus be disgraced, that Achilles' absence would be strongly felt, and so on. And so, to him with streaming eyes Thetis replied, born as thou wast to sorrow, ah, my son, why have I reared thee? Would that without tears, or cause for tears, transient as is thy life, a little span thy days might pass at Troy. But short and sorrowful the fates ordain, thy life peculiar trouble must be thine, whom therefore oh that I had never born, but seeking the Olympian hill snow-crowned, I will myself plead for thee in the ear of Jove the Thunderer. Meantime at thy fleet abiding, let thy wrath against the Greeks still burn and altogether cease from war. For to the banks of the Oceanus, where Ethiopia holds a feast to Jove, he journeyed yesterday, with whom the gods went also, and the 12th day brings them home. Then will I to his brazen floored abode, that I may clasp his knees and much misdeem of my endeavor, or my prayer shall speed. So she'll do it. She'll do it. And she's also suggesting, let thy wrath against the Greeks still burn, and altogether cease from war. She's basically giving him validation, saying, yeah, the course that you picked, that's right. The course that you picked, that's okay. The course that you picked, go right on ahead. Let them lose. Or at least act in accordance with the supplication that you made. So saying, she went, but him she left enraged, for fair Briseis' sake forced from his arms. By stress of power, meantime Ulysses came to Chrysa with the hecatomb in charge. Arrived within the haven deep their sails, furling they stowed them in the bark below. Then by its tackle lowering swift the mast, into its crutch they briskly pushed to land, heaved anchors out and moored the vessel fast. Forth came the mariners and trod the beach, forth came the victims of Apollo next. And last Chryseis, her Ulysses led, toward the altar gave her to the arms of her own father, and him thus addressed. O Chryses, Agamemnon, king of men, hath sent thy daughter home, with whom we bring a hecatomb on all our host behalf, to Phoebus hoping to appease the god, by whose dread shafts the Argives now expire. Argives, of course, being another word for the Aegeans or the Greeks. So saying, he gave her to him who with joy received his daughter then before the shrine. Magnificent in order do they ranged the noble hecatomb, each laved his hands, and took the salted meal, and Chryses made his fervent prayer with hands upraised on high. So he got the propitiation. And next time we'll read what his prayer was. Don't worry, I'll bring up the context again. That won't be a problem. And that's about it, when it comes to the Iliad, at least for today. It's interesting, you go and you have quite a few lines. 483, 8. So what's it, 172 lines or something like that. You have 172 lines of poetry, and you can extract lessons therefrom. I think it's interesting how you wind up having these things being you're either supposed to read them in high school and apparently discuss them with people that have no idea what they're talking about, or read them in college and discuss them with people who have a particular agenda in mind that's, I would say, only self-serving. Or you can just go hop on YouTube and have a chat with someone else who probably has a self-serving agenda, and discuss this. Of course, I'll admit what my agenda is. I admit that my agenda is to have a repository of this kind of stuff here. My agenda is to be able to leave something for posterity's sake. And my agenda is to surround myself with honorable people I can see myself spending my time with, and people who, if they ever wind up having children, could conceivably be friends of my children. People whom I respect, and people who may or may not agree with me on certain things, but basically are basing their lives upon certain principles I can agree with and live by. I would hope that which is good about the West, that certain things, I mean, it's not only the West, but certain things that are inherently good could be pursued. I think that that's a very important thing to do. I think it's a worthy goal in and of itself. But also, in addition to it being a worthy goal in and of itself, I think that ultimately it will lead to us being able to lead better lives. Because I don't know about you guys, but I need constant reminders. I often fall back into bad habits. Specifically, bad habits in terms of how I deal with other people. I constantly have wrong assumptions, and so these things which so clearly distill the nature of man, these things that so clearly show what human nature is, give me these reality checks. And getting these types, or getting these archetypes, or getting these figures from stories that you can go and see that people cling to because they have some sort of a ring of truth about them. They've lasted over the years because they have a ring of truth. I can choose to change myself based upon characters extracted from history and having certain aspects of them accentuated to superhuman proportions in order to properly expound upon them, in order to give them their proper weight and understanding. Or in order to give them the proper weight and from them derive a proper understanding. The ancient bards, the people that were passing these stories on from generation to generation, and ultimately Homer who wrote them down, they knew what they were talking about. And they recognized that sharing this would not only be, fun story time for their kids, or what have you, but a teaching opportunity. And then you could have this great work, this great story, where Dad could go and say, okay, now you be like Hector, or you be like Achilles, or you be like Agamemnon in this sense. And you can go and pick all the virtuous things from different people. You can go and look at the complexity inherent within each character and say, okay, well, I'd like to be this way in this aspect, in this way in that aspect. And because you get a chance to see everyone in their fullness, flaws and good things side by side, it's easy to hone in on what's good and what's bad. And especially when we don't have necessarily good role models in our own lives, I'm very thankful that I've had a few. But when we don't necessarily have them right here and now, we can still model ourselves both against abstract virtuous ideas or as concrete manifestations thereof. We can pick who it is that we want to be. We can pick our virtues. We can also pick our vices. But if we continue to focus on the virtue and direct our attention in that particular direction, I'd say that we can very well continue to develop ourselves, or at least in my case, hopefully prevent myself from deteriorating too far. Oh wow, we have 5 thumbs up. Thank you, everyone. This is lovely. Anyhow, I've been, as promised, there is another poem I wanted to share with you. And it's interesting because there was this Mother Goose nursery rhyme video thing that I grew up having, or rather, I don't know if I had it when I was very little, but when I was little, and the poem went, Rub-a-dub-dub, 3 men in a tub, and who do you think they be? The butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, and all of them gone to sea. Then there's this picture of the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker all stuck in a bathtub paddling, at sea. And then later, when I went and I read the origins of lots of these rhymes, I discovered that it was quite different. That rather than some weird adventure in a bathtub over the sea, that this was actually a reflection on the, shall we say, the state of society, or the state of a particular subset of people in society. Because it, well, if I just say the poem in its how it was originally said, it went something like this. You can then derive whatever you want to derive from it. Rub-a-dub-dub, 3 girls in a tub. And who do you think there be? The butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, and all of them gone in to sea. So, you wind up having 3 prominent members of society, especially given the fact that this is British society, right? So you wind up having a particular set of social expectations, a particular idea of what's virtuous. Yeah, maybe, especially, you would expect these guys to also have wives. That would be quite likely, it'd be a fair expectation to have, and then they are going to see a show of 3 girls in tubs. So, makes you wonder then why in the world they tried to twist that sort of a thing around to make a kiddie rhyme. I mean, there are songs about the plague, right? Ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. And things of that nature. I mean, a lot of these rhymes are considerably more morbid than the versions, or at least whatever it is that we understood them to be when we were little. And still they show us, you know, what reality is the people who wrote them, experienced them, you know, maybe with a little bit of spiciness there, a little exaggeration here, and so on. Where were we? There was one other thing that I wanted to share. Trying to find it. Unfortunately, I'm now getting a bunch of messages and things like that that I've seen from other people. Oh, here we go. This wasn't it. It's a good piece, but it wasn't it. I'll find it. Ah. I'll continue. Oh, here we go. Here is a piece by Charles Tips. This wasn't the one I was looking for, but it will do, simply due to the fact that he's a good author. The question, no, I won't do that. It's a good piece, but I really fail to see how we can go and take this particular thing of the Iliad and talk about it, because these elements don't get talked about too much in life. You know, ultimately somebody being wronged, ultimately somebody being brought low, ultimately somebody being disenfranchised or in a bad situation. You know, this is part of the character arc of Achilles. We talked about And he starts in a particular place, and his character arc goes something like that. Ultimately, we wind up having to make decisions about how we're going to conduct ourselves. Decisions based largely on reality, how we perceive it. And those decisions affect the course of our lives. I know, put a big O on my forehead and call me Captain Obvious. And maybe the reason that you don't see too much about this is because these reactions are just so natural. Wanting somebody who's wronged you to to either get what's coming to him, or at minimum that you would be recompensed for whatever it is that happened. And the thing is that all of these things can only ever be approached from a position of strength. We all have our own particular strengths, but if we're not using them appropriately, it's not like we're going to actually have people caring enough. And by people, I mean that, like, for example, Agamemnon caring enough about Achilles to be able to get him back what he wants, ever. Like, Achilles' mom cares because there's this Storge, but Agamemnon and Achilles have no such relationship. Their relationship is predicated solely upon self-interest. Solely upon that. And of course you could go and say, well, Philios is within someone's self-interest, is Storge or Agape or what have you, but it's not necessarily the case. So people that you're relating to only on terms of self-interest are only going to relate to you insofar as you're providing value for them. And the only way you can do that is ultimately by playing to something that you are at least somewhat good at. Achilles was good at war. So you make yourself a scarce resource. I'm not going to war for you. I'm going to, you sow the wind, you reap the whirlwind. And then once you go and find that spot where you're actually needed, once you go and find that spot where people are just going to be begging you to come and do your thing, then that allows you to negotiate from a position of strength as opposed to a position of weakness. Now, Achilles had already developed himself, or been developed to the point of being strong. It's just kind of taken for granted that Achilles is this strong warrior dude. So we need to find whatever it is that we are strong in, and we may, we have our own bunch of strength, our bunch of weaknesses, our bunch of things that make us who we are, and figure out how to leverage it. And I'm not saying that we need to do it in order to get revenge, or that we need to do it in order to get back Perseus, especially if it's been taken from us. But if we are in a bad situation, or we are in a difficult situation, or we're in a situation where we don't have what we want, sometimes the big thing to do is to be patient. Sometimes the appropriate thing to do is to actually wait until people see our value. And having people coming in and seeing our value will be good for us. That doesn't mean that we don't market ourselves. Achilles didn't really need to. He said his piece, and his words would have continued to ring in the ears of the listener. And Agamemnon, there's no way that he'd forget what a good warrior Achilles was. If you are really good at what you do and you leave an impression on other people, they're going to remember you. And they're going to seek you out when you're needed. And then you're basically going to be in a position to name your price, as we'll see in this story. As we'll see in the upcoming pages, as in the upcoming books. I think there's 24 total of them, and we're about 3/4 of the way through the first. Next time we are going to do, if I can, see, part 4. Part 4 is going to be lines 555 through 752. So I see we wound up getting another viewer. And I really have no idea who's watching here except for Jack. So, if any of you are interested in joining the chat, you're more than welcome to. If you want to remain anonymous, you're also welcome to do that. But I think it would be kind of fun to have an interaction. I don't know quite what the nature of it would be, but if you have any comments or things, anything you want to say, any questions you might want to ask, it'd be lovely to, to go through some of them. It was actually very interesting because I'm in my brother-in-law's childhood room, and it's interesting. I can just go look and see the books that he read. And it's really interesting because a lot of the books that he read are not directly related to whatever he's doing. You're essentially anonymous, but here you are. Well, welcome, someone unknown. Welcome, essentially anonymous man or woman. If you have something to say, you're more than welcome to say it. I'm not going to ask you to reveal your identity if you don't want to. I am curious how many of you have already read the Iliad or the Odyssey, or how many of you have? Oh wow, 6 upvotes! Thank you guys. How many of you have read the greats without having someone who's on the far left coming and telling you what to think about them, and insisting that you write papers perpetuating and agreeing with demented views on the matter? Because I can say that for over a decade I've been turned off from this stuff due to the fact that I've only ever discussed it with leftists. Except for one very short conversation I had. Well, maybe I don't know if I talked about it with Mr. Caleb Beers, but I had I guess I could say still have, a wonderful friend, John Spiegel. And he was homeschooled. Very, very, very bright guy. One of the most intelligent people I've ever met. Also one of the nicest. He was overall a great guy. He was amazing at debate. And we talked about the classics, and he seemed to enjoy them because he was able to read them for what they were. He was homeschooled, so he didn't wind up having any kind of leftist coming and telling him what to believe. He just read. He read them for their own sake. I mean, obviously, he kind of needed to get through them for school, but he read them and he enjoyed them. And being able to interact with people who can read something and enjoy it, being able to interact with somebody, with people who can actually get to the heart of things and not wind up getting twisted into weird ideologues, is nice. And having friends and intellectual companions, whether you make them online or in real life, it'll be it's pretty special. It's pretty special. Huh. I already drank all my coffee. Oops. So we're going to go over the our reading list. So first we're going through the Iliad and the Odyssey. Then we're going to read Agamemnon, Libation Bearers, Eumenides, and Prometheus Bound. So we're going to we're just going to go all through these excellent ancient works. I have them actually on it's a list on the DIY Genius site. It's in the video description here. So if you guys are interested, you can go and take a look and already get a head start on reading all of these different things, and then if you have something to say, then you'll be able to say it. And for those of you, I don't know if we're getting any new viewers, but since repetition is the mother of all learning, I'm going to go and repeat myself and say that... Oh, there we are. Did someone chat? Did somebody say something? I thought I saw somebody say something in chat. Ah, Iliad. Ooh. The Iliad. I'm trying to think if that's in the reading list for now, or if that's Virgil's Iliad. Well, that would actually be really fun if when we get to it. I don't know how long it's going to take us to get to it because I'm just me. But if we could actually turn this into a project wherein we all do reading, and then we have different leaders or different, topic coordinators or what have you. We could, if for example, more of us are interested in reading Iliad in Latin, and perhaps even translating it into English. Like, we could do whatever we want. This is our stream. We don't need to go and do things in accordance with one particular class, and we don't need to limit ourselves to 9 weeks to study one work or 3 weeks to study one work or whatever. If we want to go and spend a year translating the Iliad, that's great. I mean, I haven't read Latin since... There are a lot of things I haven't done in over a decade, and that would be one of them. So I'd need to go and review a lot of Latin. Same thing as if we're reading some Spanish, I need to go and review a whole bunch of it. If you guys would be interested in reading the Iliad in the original Latin, I'd be down for that. In fact, I wish I had a pen. I don't have a pen here. Oh well, I can go and look at this chat if I don't remember. But that actually sounds like a great idea. That really does sound like a good idea. I can't wait until we get to the Principia Mathematica by Newton. I can't wait until that. Then there's Tristan and Isolde by Wagner. Kapital by Marx, that would be fun. Dostoevsky, Brothers Karamazov. There's just so much. There's just so much good stuff you can find in a more classical repertoire. And still, there are an awful lot of things that are not part of getting a classical education that are very, very useful. We learn, the trivium. We learn about grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Well, we also live in the information age. So learning computer programming could easily be doing the same kind of a thing. I mean, logic, definitely. But then the grammar and the rhetoric simply have to do with, reading flowcharts and code and planning out how things are going to go. Grammar, logic, and rhetoric are relevant in that way too, because you're dealing with ideas, you're dealing with inputs and outputs, and you're dealing with how to function within the world. And sometimes you need computers to do things for you, so computer programming could even be a more modern skill that actually fits very well into a classical curriculum, assuming you take a certain approach to learning it. If you think about grammar, you think about, okay, well, there's this idea that there are certain syntax, there's certain rules, there's certain ways of understanding what you see. We can think, okay, well, what is it a CPU sees? What does the CPU understand? What does the CPU do? And then rhetoric, of course, would be programming. It would be writing something in such a way that a CPU could understand. Now, of course, programming is, as such, way easier. It's way easier to program a computer than it is to program a human being. But then you can't get as much in terms of a variety of complex tasks out of a computer as you can a human being. So that's that. So we've been going an hour and 8 minutes and 14 seconds. With that said, I normally do this thing where I drink 750 mils of water and 750 mils of coffee in the morning, and I'll just let you know that I'm, shall we say, feeling it. I am definitely feeling it, and so I would ask that you would be patient with me and that I would be able to go and put our 5-minute intermission here. If I go and do that, and see you on the other side after I have, shall we say, done what needs to be done in terms of taking care of a lower tier of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Right, well, we're back. And it's time to talk about some more things that people might consider harsh truths. And the reason that we bring up harsh truths isn't because we're focused on the whole idea of them being harsh. Right? Bringing up harsh truths for the sake of being harsh is just, well, it's mean. But bringing up harsh truths because they, in many contexts, aren't brought up, and because they can actually help. You know, the hard to swallow pills meme comes to mind, is, I think, a legitimate reason to bring them up. And because we wind up having people from all sorts of different backgrounds and all sorts of different realms of life, it might behoove us to constantly go back to basics. And so constantly going back to basics is something that I'm going to be doing regularly here. And one of those basics has to do with economics and economics of basically of production. How do you produce? How do you get what you want? And there's a core question that deals with it, and a really outstanding guy, Hector Quintanilla, who puts forth many good answers. And the question is, why do I work so hard but can't succeed? And he says, my great-grandfather was a tough man who took pride in working his land. Some of his neighbors were jealous of him because his land produced abundant crops. Yet, there were no hidden secrets on his farming skills. His only advantage was hard work. The more land he worked, the more crops he would reap. There was a linear relationship between hard work and results. When my grandfather was born and grew up to help his father, he started working the land. They both worked endless hours until one day my grandfather decided to move to the city. After several years of saving money, he managed to buy a truck. He started moving construction materials around town. Hard work was still needed, but now the delivered value of his work increased, as he could deliver enormous amounts of materials to various local job sites. My grandfather's value of his work increased by leveraging the mechanical power of his truck. My grandfather was still tied up to a linear relationship between hard work and results, but now with increased delivered value using the power of his truck. A few years later, my grandfather started making blocks and other value-added construction materials at his backyard. This venture eventually grew into a business. My grandfather still had to work very hard, but now the delivered value of his work was expanded by machines and people working for him. Now his hard work was not linearly related to results. His leverage used to deliver value to the market had increased dramatically using machines and other people's talents. This leverage accelerated his success. Now, to answer your question, why do I work so hard but can't succeed? It's because we're on the digital age, or we're in the digital age. The value of work has changed and leverage has changed. Hard work is not good enough anymore. You need leverage. Ask yourself, what is your delivered value to the market? What kind of leverage are you using to expand the delivery of your value? Remember, in the agrarian age, wealth originated from nature. In the industrial age, wealth originated from machines. In the digital age, wealth originates from data and knowledge. I will copy this link and put it here into video description for you guys to open up in a different tab or what have you if you're interested. This idea of leveraging and this idea of using data and knowledge appropriately, this idea of of being on top of things and using a particular skill set to get what you want, isn't in theory or in practice anything new. The means that you do it throughout the years will change, but the overall end result, the overall goal, is the same. This whole idea of leverage is important. That's why I'm doing less of the one-on-one stuff now, but I'm putting a lot of what I believe up here on YouTube. Not because I think that it's going to, that the YouTube aspect of things is going to ever bring financial success, although it may, but because YouTube allows you to reach a wider audience. You make the video once, you make the stream once, you talk about the thing once, and then you can have people over time, oh, what did my dad say 15 years ago? Well, you can read this or watch this. And then we can go and have a conversation. I can go have a conversation with my kid about that and expand it in a way relevant to him. But that repository of information will always be there. I think it would have been nice to have had, my great-grandparents using a tape player or something to record stories and things that had happened, but all I have are a few of the memories of my grandmother and a few of the memories of my other grandmother. That's all that's left of that and a few documents, birth certificates, and so on, because people didn't really keep too many journals. People didn't really say too much. There was nothing. I can't connect all that well with my ancestors due to the fact that there's so very little. And I'm hoping that putting this stuff out may, so no matter how many children I have, or how many people want to hear what I have to say, if anyone wants to hear what I have to say, maybe I'm just some arrogant jerk that doesn't actually have anything valuable to say. There's always that possibility. But either way, I'm using a platform that is potentially infinitely scalable to do so. And I would recommend that if there are things that you would like to do that can be scaled, then scale them. Build that into the system from the very beginning, so that when you do grow, when you do stumble on whatever it is that works, you'll already have a great deal of the infrastructure and the logistical capabilities in place to be able to perpetuate whatever it is you're trying to do. So make things scalable. Not that you're necessarily going to be able to scale things from day one, because obviously the only time you can ever scale is based on if somebody actually wants what you have. But if you have it being on some sort of a platform where everyone can easily access it, well, you're not going to lose anything, certainly in the beginning, except for maybe a little bit of time in learning how things work, because you have to go and use somebody else's platform, I suppose. But writing and putting it on Medium or Quora, or starting your own blog or what have you, making videos and putting them on YouTube, or starting classes, or doing things on making Coursera content, making Udemy content, making content that you can go and refer people to later, doing things once and putting the time in once that allows multiple streams of revenue over time. Those are all very good uses of our time. And especially if there are those of us who feel like we're working hard and we're somehow spinning our wheels and not getting far, we can seek to do certain aspects of things that we consider valuable or that other people consider valuable in a way that can be scaled. I 100% stand behind Mr. Hector Quintanilla's assertion that that's one of the many impediments to success is the unwillingness to adopt things that will allow us to scale. Now, there are some people that just go out and straight up seek them, and those are the kinds of people that are generally going to be a success as long as they're bringing something of value to the marketplace, and they're going to get extra points if they can market it well. Accrue knowledge so that you can secure a profitable job and provide lessons for the future, a noble quest. Yes, accrue knowledge. That's actually one of the biggest things we can do. Yes, indeed. Though it wouldn't. Well, it depends on how you understand job as well. Because many people go and understand a job as having a one-to-one correlation in between time spent and money gained, which is, I suppose, all right in the beginning. But you definitely want to go beyond that point very soon. You want to go beyond that point as soon as possible. And that involves investing time and or money in generating a system to do things that you otherwise would be needing a person to babysit the entire process. Or you can go and create a process that does need to be babysat and then hire somebody else to do it for less than what the process actually generates. That's one way of doing it. And then the person that babysits the process winds up getting some pay, and then you can wind up getting some pay for putting the system in place, and then you can reinvest the profits into generating more value for other people. This idea that somehow profit is evil is a very dangerous one. And this idea that somehow there's too much, that there can be such a thing as too much wealth, I think that's also a very bad one. Because this is the most valuable resource, right? This is what matters. If you have the knowledge, you can always make yourself valuable to somebody in some way. And the more valuable you make yourself, the more scalable you make what you do, the more value you're going to produce in life, and therefore the more the world will owe you. At least that's the way I kind of look at payment. It's like, okay, if you get paid in money for whatever it is that you provide, that money means you can go and exchange it for other goods and services, which means that people owe you whatever the value of that money happens to be. So the key is ultimately be owed something. And then you can collect whenever it is that you happen to know what it is that you want to do. So ultimately, if you go and you think of the needs of one of our bodies, a little food, a little shelter, a place to sleep, we don't really need all that much. We produce a great amount of surplus. And if we can trade that surplus or systematize generating this surplus, we can be in a very good place. So anyhow, we've been going for approximately an hour and a half. And I think I can hear somebody getting up downstairs. And I'll fully admit to having been very distracted today and having been very distracted for the past week, and I will apologize profusely for all that. I hope that our final installment of the first book of the Iliad goes well. I'll already put it up on SlideShare for you guys and put it into the description for tomorrow's stream. And I definitely wish you all the best, and look forward to seeing you the next time we wind up having an opportunity to do so. However difficult it may be to put all these things together and constantly have content ready, it's definitely worth it to see that you guys are here, you guys are watching it, and hopefully I'm able to provide something that you guys value. And so your presence is very, very... Your presence is very valued to me. You guys are great. So I'm just going to say thank you. And I'm going to close up stream and look forward to seeing you guys same time tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 a.m. Eastern European Time, whatever else time it may be. Hopefully the live dashboard will work this time. Till next time.